through education. That's A, may ease some of the inequality, and B, is just a sign of respect that we've seen what's happened to you over the last 40 years, and we're going to try to do something about it.
Now, this is not all that positive of a portrait that you're painting in this article. You're worried about what you see. Where do we go from here? What do you think?
Well, I do think some sort of economic redistribution is part of it. But the second thing, there's just no other choice when there is cultural gaps opening up. It's contact. There was a guy named Gordon Allport decades ago who had a theory, contact theory, that if you bring people together and they actually get to know one another, then a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of bitterness will fall away. A lot of people vastly overestimate how much the people on the other side hate them. We all go home and we all have members of our family who are on the other side of the political divide. Somehow hammering through that is somehow an essential cultural task, aside from all the economic and political things that have to happen.
David Brooks is a columnist for the New York Times and a contributing writer for The Atlantic. His latest piece for The Atlantic is called How the Bobos Broke America. David, thanks again for doing this.
Sure, it's been a pleasure.
Mr. Brooks and I talked about a lot of different things, including about higher education's role in exacerbating inequality. You can find my whole conversation with him. It's at marketplace.org. Our producers are Rose Conlon, Meredith Garrettson, Stephen Ryan, Alex Schroeder, Daniel Shin, and Erica Soderstrom. In Austin, I'm Andy Euler with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Business Results, dedicated to helping you hire the right people and manage them more effectively. The right people in the right jobs, managed by effective leaders, helps you achieve your desired business results. More at businessresultsllc.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, answering who, what, when, where, why, and how is critical to proving the truth. More at terrellhogan.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
A relaxed mask mandate for students and a vaccine for young children rolling out. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, good news for local parents. We'll update you on what's going on with the mask rule in Duval County Public Schools and when you can vaccinate your younger child against COVID-19. It's coming up soon. That's ahead, then later.
The press is an essential representative of its readers, viewers, listeners in monitoring the effectiveness of government and other systems.
The rise of nonprofit news and the rollout of our new venture, Jacksonville Today. All of that and more is just ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden is at the World Climate Summit in Glasgow. He says his administration will act to cut methane emissions. NPR's Jeff Brady reports new rules will apply to U.S. oil and gas operators.
The Environmental Protection Agency wants to expand rules limiting methane leaks from oil and gas operations. Existing rules apply only to new facilities. The proposed rules also extend that to existing ones. The Transportation Department also is putting out a final rule that expands federal oversight to more natural gas pipelines. This rule applies to gathering lines that move gas from production sites to interstate pipelines. Next year, rules are expected for small distribution lines in cities. Methane is the main ingredient in natural gas, and it's a potent greenhouse gas. The EPA says reducing methane emissions now would have a rapid and significant effect on climate change. Jeff Brady, NPR News.
Britain's Queen Elizabeth has also addressed leaders at the Climate Summit. NPR's Frank Langfitt reports that in a recorded speech, she urged them to avoid a global climate catastrophe.
The Queen said leaders here should not think about the politics of the day, but take concrete action to spare future generations.
It has sometimes been observed that what leaders do for their people today is government and politics. But what they do for the people of tomorrow, that is statesmanship. I, for one, hope that this conference will be one of those rare occasions where everyone will have the chance to rise above the politics of the moment and achieve true statesmanship.
The Queen, who's 95, did not travel to Glasgow as her doctors have urged her to rest. Frank Langford, NPR News, Glasgow.
Policymakers for the U.S. Federal Reserve opened 2 days of meetings today in Washington. Fed officials will decide whether to cut back the monetary stimulus that the nation's central bank has pumped into the U.S. economy ever since the pandemic surged. Steve Beckner has more.
Not only has the Fed held short-term interest rates near zero, it has aggressively bought bonds to lower long-term rates. But Fed officials have signaled they've seen enough progress toward their employment and inflation goals to provide less support for a recovering economy. Rate hikes aren't on the table, but the Fed is expected to announce cuts in its $120 billion per month bond buying.
Steve Beckner reporting. It's election day in many states. Voters in Boston and Atlanta are selecting mayors. In New Jersey and Virginia, residents are picking a governor. And in Minneapolis, voters are weighing whether to change the city's police department to a new Department of Public Safety. Supporters say this is needed to stop police violence after the murder of George Floyd. Opponents say this could leave some Minneapolis communities vulnerable to crime. This is NPR.
It's 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Senator Marco Rubio is taking big business to task. In an op-ed published yesterday, he called corporate America the instrument of anti-American ideologies. Rubio bemoaned what he described was corporate America's wokeness, and he proposed holding corporate leaders legally liable when they abuse their corporate privilege by pushing wasteful, anti-American nonsense, in his words. Military installations across Central Florida are economically important to local communities, and there are growing concerns about how those bases will be impacted by climate change. Amy Green reports.
Rising seas threaten infrastructure while warming temperatures pressure outdoor productivity. This affects communities where military installations are a vital part of the economy. Dale Catcham of Space Florida says the Space Coast is uniquely vulnerable as home to the Kennedy Space Center, a crucial gateway for government and commercial space flight.
If you look down, if you take, satellite imagery, you can see the ocean is dramatically encroaching on Launch Complex 46. And so we have to go through a lot of exercises to figure out how do we protect that.
The Biden administration released several reports last week on climate change and national security. The United Nations Climate Conference, COP26, got underway over the weekend. Amy Green in Orlando.
And right now, 65 degrees out at Jax Beach, upper 70s this afternoon with a light north wind today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Klaviyo, working to help brands deliver personalized email and SMS campaigns that drive revenue and create genuine customer relationships at klaviyo.com/NPR.
COVID vaccines for young kids here on the First Coast could be available as soon as next week. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead this hour, the rollout of the vaccine for your youngster and a change in mask policy in Duval schools. We're talking to you, parents. Give us a call, 549-2937. Then later, the rise of nonprofit news and the growth of our new venture, Jax Today. We'll tell you about it. But first this hour, students in the Duval County Public Schools are no longer under a strict mask mandate. After nearly 2 months in effect, and despite a lot of hassle from the state for that, the mask requirement within Duval schools was relaxed Friday when the COVID transmission data met the second of two key thresholds set by the school board. In other words, the positive case count is going down enough that the school officials feel they can relax the mask policy a little bit. That's good news. Now, face masks are still required in the Duval schools, but parents now again have the ability to opt their child out of the mandate without needing a signed form from a doctor. At the same time, a CDC advisory panel is expected to vote today on whether to recommend a lower dose Pfizer BioNTech COVID vaccine for kids aged 5 to 11. Parents have lots of questions about all of this, so we're pleased to welcome back to the show Dr. Mobeen Rathore, Professor, UF College of Medicine, JAX, Chief of Infectious Diseases at Wolfson Children's. Dr. Rathore, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
And the other leading pediatrician and child health expert in this area, Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, also on the line, also a pediatric leader at UF Health Jacksonville, among other roles. Dr. Goldhagen, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
All right, and it's thank you so much for being with us, gentlemen, 549-2937, as we talk with two of the top pediatricians in the state, if not the country, about this news affecting parents of kids of all ages, but particularly younger kids. 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. And our Facebook page is open. Before we talk about the vaccine, let's talk about the school system. Dr. Rathore, let's begin with you. Duval County Public Schools has relaxed its mask mandate beginning Monday of this week, because the case count has gone down enough that they feel it's safe now to allow parents to opt their child out. Of course, the mask mandate in schools across many districts around the country has been a real political flashpoint. It could even affect the outcome of a gubernatorial election in Virginia tonight. We'll be watching that. But from a purely medical standpoint, what's your reaction to this move by the schools?
Melissa, I think we had previously discussed that when the infection rate falls at the lower end, which is as of October 29, the last time I have the data access to me, it was 2.9%. So I think we are at a stage where, fortunately, the infection transmission rates in our community are low, or lower, so we can really remove the mask mandate. Having said that, I would encourage all parents to encourage their children to wear the mask, especially if your children are not immunized. So whereas, we're trying to get back to normality as much as possible. So I think this is, I feel comfortable at this time to remove the mask mandate. Keep in mind that we need to keep very close track of what's happening in the community transmission. So if we have to revert back to mask mandates, we can do that.
It's 549-2937. Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, what's your reaction to this? The Education Commissioner for Florida, Richard Corcoran, tweeted yesterday, "I'm putting the districts on notice. Come into compliance or face the consequences." And he was referring specifically to Duval County. But of course, Duval has already eased the mask requirement after flouting the state's threats for weeks now. And so for the bottom line is parents just need to know what their options are. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I think it's a serious situation that we're in because public health and the expertise of public health has been eliminated in the state. And we've spoken about this before. It's inappropriate for an education commissioner to be making statements about what, in fact, is happening at the local level and what, in fact, public health experts should be the entities that are making these decisions in collaboration with other medical professionals. So the situation is focused now on this masking issues, but the larger issue is that we do not have a public health system in Florida at this point at the state level or at the local level that is capable of protecting our citizens, in this case, from this pandemic. But as we've spoken about in the past, that this pandemic is just a dress rehearsal for the next one that we'll be experiencing. And so instead of public health, what we have now is politics, and it's a dangerous, dangerous situation.
It's 549-2937 to join the show. Gary tweets the show, "It's a terrible thing, in my opinion, to relax the mask mandate, but it's great there is a vaccine now available for kids when they begin school." Okay, let's talk about the vaccine for kids age 5 to 11. Let's talk about that now and call us with your thoughts. 549-2937. Dr. Rathore, what does the CDC's advisory panel vote today on the Pfizer shot for kids age 5 to 11. What does that mean for parents who've been awaiting a chance to vaccinate their younger children?
Well, Melissa, this is really a key moment in our nation's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So far, all children have not had access to vaccines, but we are hopeful that very soon, as soon as today, school-age children will benefit from life-saving protection that the COVID-19 vaccine offer. And I think we fully expect the vaccine would be approved for those children. We forget that more than 6 million children have been infected with this virus since the beginning of the pandemic. So children have suffered in numerous ways, including disruption of their education. We were just talking about masks, harms to their mental, emotional health, and greatly diminished access actually to the other critical medical services, including immunization. So this is great news because vaccinating children will protect their health and will also allow them to fully engage in all the activities that are so important in their health and development. So I'm very excited that this vaccine is soon going to be available, and I would hope that parents would stand in line to get their children. Don't forget, COVID-19 is now a vaccine-preventable disease, just as polio is, whooping cough, measles, all the other diseases that we have so successfully prevented from infecting children.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary to see officials say there can be no vaccine mandates for children when we already have them for children, Dr. Goldhagen. Kids need a whole rash of vaccines before they can enter school. Let's talk about this vaccine, though, in particular, Dr. Goldhagen. How do we expect this rollout to take place here in our area? Will it go to drugstores and pediatricians' offices both?
Well, we're actually in the process now. The Partnership for Child Health and the Population Health Consortium is, in fact, reaching out to all of our pediatricians as we speak to identify which ones will be actually giving the vaccine. We're also reaching out to the retail pharmacies and Publix and so on to identify which one of those pharmacies and resources will be available to parents. And so we should have that information by the end of the week and certainly make it available to all of the news outlets and have it mapped on our websites and so on. The intent is to distribute it through the physicians' offices, although it's a little complex and many physicians have not been giving the vaccine to older children. And so it's a little bit unclear now, but hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be able to identify where parents can get the shots for their children, including the health department. But I want to just mention one really important issue, and that is that there will be a special session. The governor will be calling a special session in mid-November to really address these issues. And all vaccine mandates are on the table.
Yeah.
There's already a call, a suggestion by the legislature that they want to eliminate all vaccine mandates, not just the COVID vaccine. So we could go back into a situation where we were, in fact, before we had vaccines, where, in fact, all children could possibly be vulnerable to routine diseases that we have wiped out in our community because of the political play to eliminate all vaccines.
5492937. What about that, Dr. Rathore, the co-leader of the Democratic caucus in the Florida State House, thinks the legislature will scale back the governor's proposal to prevent business and government entities from mandating COVID vaccine, mandating the vaccine for employees. The corporate sector wants that option by and large in Florida, so they are at odds with state leadership on this. Disney has gone ahead and implemented vaccine policies that run counter to the governor's stance. So have the major cruise ship industries in the state. So how this plays out for adults is one thing. How it plays out for children is another. And of course, that's the concern of both of you. It would be extraordinary to see the state talk seriously about eliminating vaccine requirements for polio, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, whooping cough, This seems as though it's so outlandish that it would not get approved by the state legislature. However, the fact that it's even being discussed, I'm sure, is concerning to you.
It's a disaster waiting to happen if that happens. And, I will frankly, usually I don't make statements like this, but if Florida removes the vaccine mandates for school children, parents should speak strongly and think many times before they move their children and their families to Florida. And those parents who have young children in Florida who go to schools should seriously consider moving out of Florida if if the vaccine mandates are removed. This is ridiculous. I think we cannot place our children on the political altar. Are we going to be states who's known for killing our children? Is that where we are going with this? This is. I'm not a political person, but I am an advocate for children, and I support science and I support evidence. This is just, let me go ahead and say that I shouldn't be. This is stupid.
Well, and I hear the emotion in your voice because you and Dr. Goldhagen both understand that it's the effectiveness of mandates for childhood immunizations that has kept kids safe from horrible diseases like polio and whooping cough and others. And so it's almost no longer within our living memory how bad those diseases were and how much suffering occurred before the advent of vaccines to prevent them. And so as we talk about that, one more question for you, Dr. Goldhagen, before we go to calls. What would you say to parents who have younger children, kids under age 12? They're hearing now that the vaccine is available for their younger children, and they're still on the fence about vaccinating their child for COVID.
Right, and it's not an insignificant number of families. It's certainly less than 50% now are committed to actually going ahead and getting the vaccine. So this is really a challenge and an opportunity for pediatricians and family doctors to reach out to their patients, to these children, and begin the dialogue and discussion about how important it is. The science is certainly in favor of the vaccine. We've had experience with adults. We've had experience now with adolescents about the safety of the vaccine. And it's going to take honest discussions with families to move them to a point where they feel comfortable with this. I think Mobeen and I and others who have cared for children over the decades know that parents want to do the best thing and make decisions in the best interest of their children. It's now up to us to really work with them to ensure that they have the information and are comfortable with giving their children the vaccine. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. And we're all, from the standpoint of pediatricians and family docs, we're committed to make this happen. It's critically important. Mobeen says he's not a political person. Well, I am perhaps a political person, and it is going to require families, the voice of all of our families around the state, to make sure that, in fact, the elimination of vaccine mandates for children doesn't happen. And now is the time for parents to make their voices heard.
5492937. Add your voice to this conversation. 5492937. Mark in St. Augustine. Hi, Mark. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I just want to make a comment. As every day goes on, we end up with more and more data that we can look at and base decisions on. Relatively recently, the CDC changed their definition of the vaccine on their website to one that basically helps you reduce the severity of symptoms should you get COVID. So the word vaccine kind of implies that you won't get a disease, that you are, in fact, immune from it, but we're not seeing that. So as more and more data comes out, I'm not anti-vaccine. I got the shot. I have no problem with it. But I can understand parents in the state saying, hey, if you don't want to get this for your kid, you don't have to, because people who have the vaccine have gotten COVID. People who haven't had the vaccine, I know people who have gotten COVID twice. Just the more and more data that comes out, I understand families making that decision for
Yeah. Thank you for that. Dr. Rathore, the data's in that if you're vaccinated, you are far less likely to die or go to the hospital with COVID-19 than if you're unvaccinated. I think for the parents of the 28 million kids in this country age 5 to 11, they see this, they recognize it. They're just a little concerned about the effect of the vaccine on a young child. This is a lower dose vaccine. Can you talk a little bit about how it's been vetted, how it's been studied, and how the CDC is expected to view it as safe for young children, that whole process?
So first, let me address one thing Mark said. I think Mark makes a very good point. This vaccine prevents disease, not necessarily infection. I think that's a very important distinction to make. What that means is even those who are vaccinated, as you said earlier, Melissa, those who are vaccinated may still get the infection, but are not going to be as sick, are not likely to get into the hospital, are not likely to be on a breathing machine, and are less likely to die. The data on that is crystal clear. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that the vaccine prevents disease. There is still chance of getting the infection. And you're absolutely right, Melissa. 28 million children 5 to 11 years of age have not received the vaccine. This vaccine it is the same vaccine as the ones we have given millions of doses to those 12 and older. It's just a smaller dose, 1/3 of the dose. And this vaccine has been studied and has found to that 1/3 of the dose given to the older children and adults. The lower dose is still effective in children. They studied 3,000 children in this study. There was no evidence of any serious side effects on this vaccine with these children. And we also know that this vaccine was more than 90% effective in preventing disease. I also want to put a postscript to that. You know, your child may not be very sick with a COVID infection or maybe asymptomatic, but they can still get the dreaded MIS-C, which happens 4 weeks or so after you've got the infection, which you most of the time don't even know that you have had the infection. And don't forget, children still get those long-term complications of COVID, even if they are not symptomatic with the acute infection, the so-called COVID long. So I think I hear what Mark is saying, but I want to make sure I make that clarification. There's a little bit of misinformation that the vaccine prevents disease, prevents serious disease, prevents hospitalization, prevents death. It may still cause in some people who get the vaccine the infection.
Okay. Dr. Goldhagen, you know, there will be pop-up mobile clinics, school-based clinics for families coming up, along with, as we've mentioned, children's hospitals, pharmacies, and pediatrician and family doctors' offices. This is all part of the federal rollout for vaccinating kids as soon as next week. So what are your final thoughts?
Well, yes, I spoke with the health department yesterday. They are working with the school system to look at possibly immunizing children in the schools. There will be some pop-up clinics. There will be pharmacies, retail pharmacies, and Publix, and some physicians' offices. So there will be enough access to the vaccine to ensure that every child has essentially immediate access to being vaccinated against COVID-19. The challenge now that we have is to make sure that parents feel comfortable with the decision to, in fact, vaccinate their children. We know that children are at greater risk from getting the disease and side effects than they are from getting vaccinated and incurring side effects. So the safety margin is significant. And from a medical standpoint, from a pediatric standpoint, I think all pediatricians would say that, in fact, it's safe and that parents should make the decision in their children's best interest to vaccinate their kids.
Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, Dr. Mobeen Rathore, we're so pleased to have you on the show, two of the top pediatricians in the region and even the country. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Melissa.
Okay, much more still ahead. The other huge hot topic today, 2 city council committees yesterday decided to vote down a proposal to remove a Confederate statue in Springfield. We'll take a closer look at that controversy and also that special session in Tallahassee on vaccine mandates as we speak in just a little while with State Representative Angie Nixon. That's a little bit later, but up next.
The press is an essential representative of its readers, viewers, listeners in monitoring the effectiveness of government and other systems.
The growth of nonprofit news and the rollout of our new venture, Jacksonville Today. That's next. Welcome back. Well, thousands of you have already subscribed to our brand new venture, Jacksonville Today. You can do it too. Just go to jaxtoday.org, enter your email, and that's it. You've signed up for our free daily newsletter sent straight to your inbox each morning. We're so excited about it because Jacksonville Today not only catches you up on everything going on in this community, but it's also part of the overall growth of our nonprofit newsroom here at WJCT. As for-profit media struggles in the digital age, nonprofit news organizations nationwide are stepping up with a brand new funding model. Because local news is important to the health of a community. It keeps local government honest. It keeps you, the citizens, informed, engaged. It saves your taxpayer dollars. It increases a city's vibrancy. Now, I spoke about the rise of nonprofit news with three great guests: Dick Toffel, formerly of ProPublica and the Wall Street Journal; Michael Murray, who heads up the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations here in Jacksonville; and David McGowan, our CEO at WJCT. Here's that conversation. Guys, so good to be with you. Dick Toffel, let's start with you. You know, a recent Pew Research poll found most Americans actually think their local news media are doing well financially. But that's not typically true, of course. I mean, one ongoing challenge for the news business has been finding ways to finance this work in a digital era because the traditional forms of revenue have fallen away. You're an expert on this. Can you explain why it's so important for cities like Jacksonville to continue to have strong local news operations?
Well, first of all, Melissa, thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, I think that that the press is an essential representative of its readers, viewers, listeners in monitoring the effectiveness of government and other systems. People can't attend all the city council hearings or school board hearings or public meetings that if all of us had all the time in the world, we might want to. But we need to know about that in order to exercise our rights as citizens. So the press plays a critical role in that. And when the business of the press deteriorates, especially the newspaper business, which has carried a lot of the load on these issues for a very long time, then people are left in the dark about how the society is being run. And when that happens, they can't exercise those rights as citizens, and our system degrades.
That's right. Now, Michael Murray, not everyone might realize that the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations is located right here in Jacksonville. You support the work of public media nationally, but you're also supportive of local efforts like our new Jax Today newsletter here at WJCT and everything we do here at WJCT on the radio and on digital platforms. So can you talk a little bit about what drives your interest and support in nonprofit news?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on today, Melissa. For many years, the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations has supported public media, as you mentioned, but most of that support has gone for broadcast television. And a few years ago, the board, in conversation with the staff, realized that there are other ways in which the values of the foundation are manifested through public media not only through broadcast television, but through what goes on at local affiliates. And as we looked across the landscape of local journalism, we came to believe that public media stations can play an important role in filling emerging gaps in local journalism. As many of you know, when local news declines, there's good data that shows that there's more corruption, less competitive elections, weaker municipal finances, and politicians who tend to vote more along party lines rather than thinking about benefits to their local districts. So as we looked across different news deserts that were emerging across the country, we came to believe that public stations, which already have substantial infrastructure and subscribers, could play an important role in filling gaps in providing local journalism.
Well, that's certainly what we're trying to do. David McGowan, our CEO here at WJCT Public Media, you're working on filling those gaps. You've really prioritized expanding our local digital and on-air news footprint in the 904. Jacksonville is like so many other cities in this regard, and you've actually in recent weeks talked about some other examples around the country you can point to that show how this is actually an issue for all of America, not just Jacksonville.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. You know, it's really interesting because when we do new things here at WJCT Public Media, you know, we typically look around at other markets, other cities around the country that are doing things that look like the things that we're trying to do. And in many cases, that involves looking at our public media colleagues across the country. But in this case, as we sought to build our local journalism presence here, we really took inspiration from the kind of organizations that Dick has led for many years and from their local counterparts across the country. Those organizations like Texas Tribune or Vermont Digger or the Voice of San Diego, to name three fairly prominent ones, were really started as digital-first organizations without the kind of legacy media kind of operations that public radio and public television stations have. And that has given them, you know, an opportunity to kind of start fresh and build operations with that digital audience in mind. And so we really studied them very carefully and continue to do that as we build what we're building here online, because there are lots of things that you can do online, whether it's data visualization or other kinds of techniques that captivate people in that environment that really are outside the purview of what, for example, the website of a local public radio station might do. So we're excited about that. We're excited about having those new colleagues. We're in touch with lots of them all the time. Every week I'm talking with them and are really looking to learn from what the best of them have done.
Right. And of course, let's make another plug, and I'll do this again in a few minutes. You can subscribe to jaxtoday.org. Just go to jaxtoday.org, enter your email, and subscribe to our new daily free newsletter, and you'll be seeing more from Jax Today next year. Now, Dick Toffel, most of the funders that support local nonprofit news like Jax Today and WJCT, they tend to be national foundations, like the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations. But you believe that local communities and local foundations need to step up their support for their communities. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important as a civic obligation that local people who know their own community best and can best judge the efforts that are being made locally lend their support. Second, there's just not enough national resources to fund this in every community we're going to need it in locally in the country. The big cities, that might work, or a few of them, particularly on the coasts, but I think that there are a lot of places in America that'll be left behind if we're counting only on national funders to float the necessary investment in local publicly oriented journalism.
Right. I mean, and you know, one recent example that many people have brought up to me in the last couple of years in Jacksonville is there's currently a federal grand jury investigation happening in this community into the failed effort to privatize JEA, the city's publicly owned utility. That grand jury, you could argue, might not have been impaneled if it weren't for the effort of local journalists acting as a watchdog on the actions of their government. And so Michael Murray, how does Arthur Vining Davis engage on this? You're a foundation with a national scope. Do you feel optimistic about the field?
I am optimistic about the field, not only because I think national foundations like AVDF have begun to support efforts of this sort, but because those national foundations are advocating with local funders, place-based funders, and frankly, just individuals within citizens who are philanthropically engaged to support work of this sort. And it's hard to overestimate the importance of this. You know, having high-quality local journalism is to the health of a community the way having a strong healthcare provider community is important to the health of individuals in that community. Local journalism monitors the health of the local community and helps inform citizens about how to maintain the health of that community in the same way that physicians do with respect to people in that community. And so we need to have this strong, vibrant institution present across the country if citizens are going to be able to understand and engage effectively with each other and with their local leaders.
So with all of that said, David McGowan will actually be hosting a community event later this month for local civic leaders to learn more about this. Dick Toffel will be the featured speaker. Set the table for us. What's on the agenda?
Well, first, let me thank Dick publicly here for coming to Jacksonville. I think it's really important that we hold these kind of events for our civic leadership community. It's part of a series, actually, of events that we have endeavored to bring to our community. We brought Sue Cross here, the president of Institute for Nonprofit News. We're very fortunate to have Dick coming this month, and Judy Woodruff will be here in February. So it's really an effort to make people aware of the problem, as you started out saying. Not everyone is even aware that this is a problem and the kinds of manifestations that this problem actually results in. But I think it's also a two-way street, Melissa. I think it's really important and part of my job to bring national leaders in this field to Jacksonville and have them interact with our community here and understand what this community is like, how it is maybe different than some of the northeastern communities or West Coast communities where this kind of thing is arguably easier to do because they're larger cities in some cases or cities that have supported these kinds of efforts in the past. So it's really exciting for us to be able to have that conversation, and we're really looking forward to it.
We certainly are, and thanks for the conversation right now. Dick Toffel, formerly of ProPublica and the Wall Street Journal, Michael Murray, Arthur Vining Davis Foundations, and our CEO, David McGowan. Gentlemen, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, long-running efforts to take down a Confederate statue honoring the women of the Confederacy, and this is located in Springfield, it's likely dead for now after city council committees voted against the proposal. With more on that and also an upcoming special session on vaccine mandates, we welcome State Representative Angie Nixon of Jacksonville. She's on the line. Representative Nixon, good morning. Representative Nixon, we're going to have to take a quick break because we've lost your call. We'll be right back, folks. Okay, we have her now, State Representative Angie Nixon of Jacksonville. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us. You know, you will soon be called back with your fellow lawmakers for a special legislative session on vaccine mandates. More about that in a moment. But first, the other big talker happening around town today is news that a couple of city council committees voted down a proposal to remove a large Confederate statue in Springfield. What's your reaction to that?
So it's a little upsetting, and I just thinking along the lines of, as we stand in, we stand in solidarity and we sympathize with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we would not want well, we know that there aren't any statues or parks named after Nazis. And so as your black brothers, being your black brothers and sisters, we would want people to empathize and sympathize with us as well, knowing that our ancestors were raped and brutalized and beaten, and there are actually parks and schools and things that are named after folks that wanted to keep our ancestors in those conditions. And so it's a little disheartening, but we still have a lot of work to do, a lot of organizing to do around those issues. And it stems from systemic racism, and it's something that unfortunately, the Republican Party doesn't necessarily want to teach in schools. And it's very disheartening, but we're going to keep organizing around it.
Now, as we follow that, you'll be going back to Tallahassee along with all of your colleagues for a special session on vaccine mandates. That's scheduled for later this month. The idea that businesses in Florida can't implement vaccine policies that run counter to what the governor wants. Some companies have already flouted the governor's directives, like Disney and Citi, which is a large employer here in Jacksonville. Tell us what we might expect from this special session on vaccine mandates.
What we can expect is the Republicans, our governor, they're being hypocritical. They often talk about not wanting big government, but here they are they are overstepping and overreaching in terms of small business owners and business owners in general. It's very concerning, right? And so we know that our governor is not leading our state in the right direction. He's actually posturing himself and positioning himself for a bid for a higher office. And we had the opportunity to call a special session when this pandemic was ravaging through our state, when we were losing countless lives, right? Like teachers and kids and seniors. We didn't call a special session then. We didn't call a special session when the unemployment system was down and people were locked out and couldn't get through, and, they were losing, facing evictions. They had to stand in food giveaway lines for hours at a time. He didn't call a special session then, but he wants to call a special session now simply because, again, he's just posturing and trying to position himself for a higher office. We need to do things like expand affordable health care. We need to address issues like the fact that there's a huge affordable housing crisis. It's ridiculous. People are getting priced out of their neighborhoods. They're getting pushed out of their neighborhoods because they can no longer afford to live there. So instead of calling special sessions for those issues, instead of calling special sessions around early learning and child care being more affordable and accessible for people, he wants to make a play for the highest office in the land. And that's not leadership, and we have to push back against that.
Now, Democrats have said they'll push back and try to scale back the governor's proposals. They are also expected to push back on an idea that would actually replace the role of OSHA in Florida, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Have set up their own state agency and nullify the federal oversight of OSHA in Florida, which is quite extraordinary. Now, all of that said, Democrats are in the minority in Tallahassee. This is a Republican-run state. Mm-hmm. So what can Democrats honestly do in this special session
we can do some great things, right? So we, in the minority, we were actually able, I helped organize, and then my colleagues helped do sign-on letters to force and pressure the governor to apply for the pandemic electronic benefits transfer, right? That funding that he initially said, oh, the kids are back in school now, so they don't need money for food. So we organized members in the community as well as some of our elected officials across the state, and we pressured the governor, right? And we forced his hand. The same thing we had to also do the same thing in regards to them applying for funding from the federal government for money for the school system. We forced their hands with that. And so it's up to us as Democrats to organize within our communities, to build people power, to alert everyone and let them know all the negative things that the governor is doing in our state, that the Republicans are doing in our state, just letting them know. And when
we lost there you are. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you calling in. I apologize that whenever we connect folks over the phone, sometimes we have to deal with technology. So thank you for hopping on the line. State Representative Angie Nixon, Democrat of Jacksonville. That special legislative session on vaccine mandate bans is scheduled for November 15th. We'll be following along. Representative Nixon, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And again, we will also be following the action at Jacksonville City Hall as another committee is still set to vote on the removal of the statue honoring the women of the Confederacy in Springfield Park, the former Confederate Park. That's an ongoing story, so more to come on that. A quick break, and in a moment, Downtown Art Walk is back, and we've got a preview for you. All the fun happening Wednesday evening. We'll be right back.
Episcopal School of Jacksonville is a private coeducational college preparatory school, preparing students grades 1 through 12 to make a difference in the world with effective communication, critical thinking, and problem-solving abilities. Information at esj.org. Lee & Kate's Glass, family-owned and operated for 95 years. Lee & Kate's Glass is your source for upgrading your home's glass, from shower doors and mirrors to windows and tabletops. Learn more at leeandkatesglass.com.
What's Jacksonville today?
Jacksonville today is growing.
Chaotic.
It's
creative. Jacksonville today is hopeful.
Get the Jacksonville Today newsletter with the top local stories of the day, plus exclusive columns, a heads up on getting involved in local decision making, and the best of what's weird and wonderful in Northeast Florida. The Jacksonville Today newsletter. Sign up now at jaxtoday.org. That's jaxtoday.org.
How does it feel?
I'm Robin Young. Broadway's Girl from North Country uses Bob Dylan's music as a soundtrack to a story about the desperation of Depression-era Duluth, Minnesota. That's next time, here and now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
Like a rolling stone.
President Biden is overseas as the Global Climate Summit, COP26, kicks off in Glasgow. But here at home, climate change continues to wreak havoc, and pollution is costing lives on the ground. A new investigation from ProPublica dives into the deadly effects of air pollution on communities across the country. The air we breathe, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, there's a lot going on downtown outside of City Hall. And James Weldon Johnson Park is often at the center of all the action, and they will be again tomorrow night during Wednesday's First Wednesday Art Walk. Liz McCoy is executive director of Friends of JWJ Park. She's on the line with a preview. Hey, Liz.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great to have you. Now, this is only the second Art Walk since the pandemic began, so it's exciting to see it back as we kick off November. A fun Wednesday, First Wednesday tradition each month in Jacksonville. What can we expect tomorrow night?
Well, it sure is a lot of fun. The very first one that we had back was filled with a ton of energy, so we're excited to see it back again. In the park, we have the Art Walk Beer Garden, and it is sponsored by Stage Creations. We've got a great band called Big Papa Fish. They've got a contemporary spin on blues and rock, classic rock, and bassist Ace Wynn is just a fabulous entertainer, and it promises to be a really, really great time. Plus, we've got Tabula Rasa, who is going to be sampling some of their breweries' fine features, like Garçon de Soleil Belgian Blonde, the Schieferfest October Brew, and the Standard Need Peanut Butter and Nanner Sandwich Hefeweizen. All that is in one beer, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we also have a ton of local beers and craft beers and, of course, wine and liquor as well. We've got a group with Dia de los Muertos Jacks. They're going to be doing musical performances, face painting, and costume contests. Of course, we've got food trucks, 904 Burgers, San Marco Cheese Fried, Chubby Burrito, and Hibachi Party are all in the park, plus almost 30 art vendors just within the park. And then there's, of course, more that happens all throughout the city.
Right. The whole idea behind the first Wednesday of the month Art Walks is to check out art, check out downtown.
That is correct. There are three main hubs which Art Walk is centered around. One is our park, and one is the Jessie, which is the Jessie Ball DuPont Center, and then the ViStar Breezeway. At the Jessie, I know that they're going to have the art bikes. They're going to have a live artist paint a bike, and Grace Bio is going to be the artist for that. They've also got local vendors. They've got Crave Vegan and Viva La Familia food trucks. And, of course, Overstreet Duckus, his exhibit is at the Corner Gallery at the Jessie, and which is a fabulous exhibit if you haven't seen it. And at the ViStar Breezeway, they've got DJ Energy, and, of course, Vagabond Flea is programming all of their vendors. And that's not all, because all of the businesses within that kind of triangle, they will also be activated. And I know some of the things that are happening. At the Lark, they have DJ Nick Fresh, and a new exhibit called Last Coast, Come-Ups from the Broke Down, which is curated by Roy Albert Berry and Tony Rodriguez. And they also are going to be serving drinks from Regard Libations. And Calypso Couture, which is a fabulous shop right there on Laura Street, they've got a hat company coming out of Bainbridge, Georgia. They're going to be also have a meta-reel artist called Wendy Means and music by Nikki. So those are just some of the things that are happening. And, of course, the object is, of course, to go from one place to another. We'd love it if you spent the whole day and the whole evening in the park, but you'll be really missing out because we want you to go everywhere, all throughout downtown.
So as you said, it's sort of a triangle, three main nodes: the park, James Weldon Johnson Park, directly in front of City Hall, the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund Building, and the Breezeway at the ViStar Building. The mention of Art Bikes Jacks is great. That is such a great new venture. These are electric bikes that are painted by local artists, and you can download via your phone a self-guided tour, ride these electric bikes all over the urban core, and check out public art all over the city. So that's really cool. So much happening Wednesday night, and everyone needs to come out and enjoy Art Walk. And by the way, Liz, you have some upcoming events planned for the park to really make the holidays merry and bright. Can you tell us quickly what else is coming up later this year?
Yes, absolutely. On November 29th, we have our annual Totally Lit Hanukkah party, which is a lot of fun, especially for the kids. We've got Gillies who caters it, and it's a ton of fun. Of course, we have games and food and music and sing-alongs, and of course the menorah lighting. Then we also have a downtown food truck takeover on December 11th from 11 to 4. We're going to have Santa Claus. We'll have music by Groove Coalition, and of course vendors and food trucks. And then of course the December Art Walk will feature the city's Christmas tree lighting, and that's December 1st. I also wanted to say, Melissa, that there's also an interactive map on iloveartwalk.com, so you don't have to remember all of the the addresses and everything. You can go there and find where you want to be. So
have fun, everyone. It's Art Walk, the first Wednesday of each month in downtown Jacksonville, kicking off tomorrow evening. Liz McCoy, Executive Director of Friends of James Weldon Johnson Park. It really is going to be a beautiful evening, and it's so great to have it back. So thank you, Liz. Have fun.
Thank you, Melissa. We will. Thank you.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks to our whole production team, Heather Schatz, Isabella De Silva directing today, Catherine Hobbs, Jessica Palumbo, Randy Roguski, and the entire WJCT News team. Have a great Tuesday. We'll see you right back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by